It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So I hope you're having a great new year. Things have really kicked off with a bang for me, and a lot of people reaching out to me, asking a lot of questions, getting their financial plans in order. Today I want to touch on affordability, and particularly housing affordability. Recently, Trump has announced that he is going to take steps to ban institutions from buying homes. And there's a lot of people discussing the positives and negatives of this idea. I have to admit, initially when I first heard it, it certainly sounds appealing. One of the statements he pointed out is, corporations don't live in homes, people do. And that is a very popular statement, obviously. But as I thought about this proposal and delved into it deeper, more and more concerns come that I'm not sure that this proposal would do more harm than good. And I'm going to share what I mean by this. The first thing I think, though, we need to understand is Trump is famous for floating trial balloons. He throws ideas out there to see how people react and get feedback. So whether this is actually going to happen or not, far from certain. Not long ago, he floated the idea of a 50-year mortgage. I shared on this show how I thought that was an incredibly bad idea for a number of reasons. He floated the idea of portable mortgages, and that idea has died on the vine for the problems that are involved in making that happen with the financial institutions that we have and how they operate today. And I believe this is just another trial balloon that, although, and again, on the surface sounds really good, in practice probably does more harm than good. First of all, I do want to say that I am glad to see the administration is at least focusing and thinking about for housing affordability. There's no question that that has become a huge problem in America. Over the last 4 or 5 years, housing prices have increased approximately 50%, if not more in some areas. First-time home buyers average now age 40, the highest in recorded history. That we as a country are short about 2 to 4 million homes. And I think that's what really boils down to the major problem. What's the solution to housing affordability? The real solution is we need more supply of homes. How do you increase the supply of homes? The bottom line is you need to incentivize home builders to build more homes, either through tax proposals, reduction of regulations, zoning regulations, things like that. To increase home building, you're going to start to see more housing affordability. And remember, I'm hesitant about government intervention because what caused this housing affordability problem? Well, primarily it was caused by the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates artificially low for well over a decade and therefore pushing asset prices up. This also had the effect of many people locking into low interest rate mortgages. And now that mortgage interest rates are about double of what they were previously, even if someone wanted to move and sell their home, that they have this lock-in effect. They cannot afford to sell their current low interest rate mortgage and move to a higher interest rate mortgage. Remember, it was government intervention through primarily the Federal Reserve that caused the problem. And oftentimes when the government tries to solve one problem, they end up causing another. And I think this latest proposal is just another iteration of that. Why do I say that? Large investors, let's say Wall Street institutional investors, defined by, say, owning 1,000 homes or more, only own about 4% of the total homes in the United States. But this is a misleading statistic itself because their ownership is concentrated on a number of regional hotspots. Places like Atlanta, where it's as high as 25%, or Jacksonville, Florida, where it's about 21%. Tampa is at about 16%. There's about 7 or 8 markets that the large institutional investors have concentrated their efforts on that are in a growth stage. and have low regulatory hurdles to purchase or build new homes. So that tells you immediately that one of the solutions to increasing supply, which would be the ultimate solution, is reducing the regulations. And we see this on a regional basis. Inventory has increased significantly. Some of these areas even higher than pre-COVID levels now. Austin, Texas, for example, now has famously, home prices have dropped about 25% from the peak. So one of the biggest solutions is get government out of the way so that home builders can build more homes, and therefore prices themselves will drop. Rental prices have dropped about 5 to 7%. Now, that may not sound like a large drop, but it is significant because if you look at ROI, return on investment, on a rental property, a 5 to 7% drop in rental income can mean about a 50% reduction in profits to the landlord or to the owner. This is a significant reduction in profitability. And that is why you are seeing real estate investors, both large and small, are net sellers currently because the profitability on rental properties has declined. In fact, in 2024, the only area that large institutional investors are actually buying or building more than they're selling happen to be build to rent. These are neighborhoods where they either own or contract with a home builder to build an entire neighborhood. The real estate investor, the large institutional investor, then buys the homes and rents them out. Now, we have to ask ourselves a simple question. If this ban on institutional investors is implemented, will it affect build-to-rent homes? And if it does, that would have a negative impact on the result because obviously, if an institutional investor is contracting a builder to build new homes, that's increasing inventory. And the problem with housing, the prices, is based primarily on lack of inventory. So do we want to ban something that would create more inventory, which would actually have the opposite effect? Now, it is true in a number of markets that the average investor purchases have increased upwards of 27%. And in certain markets, we have even seen neighborhoods in some suburban areas, for example, around Atlanta and Phoenix, where institutional investors own over 70% of all the rental homes. The problem was caused by government intervention, by the Federal Reserve creating the asset bubble by pushing interest rates too low and keeping them there too long, which now has created an asset bubble. They were trying to solve one problem and created another, which is typically what happens when the government gets involved. The housing correction is starting to happen as we speak. We are seeing reductions in prices, reductions in rentals, and it's primarily because there has been an increase in inventory. If the government would just get out of the way and let the free market actually allow a free market, the Federal Reserve has been interfering in our economy, in our markets, predominantly since the Great Recession, with quantitative easing, quantitative tightening, that they've created a lot of unintended consequences and additional problems. If they would just get out of the way and let things shake out and just give it a little bit of time, we would see a natural correction. Prices would balance out. It's a shame that people and investors have to really consider government actions and policies and the Federal Reserve when making investment decisions. It shouldn't be that way. That's part of the reason why there's so much uncertainty. And there's a feeling with a lot of people I talk to that just like, it doesn't feel right and I can't put my finger on it. It's because there's so much intervention and politicians and bureaucrats and the Federal Reserve who want to keep putting their thumb on the scale, thinking they know better. And frankly, in most cases, they really, really don't. So I think this idea of a ban on institutional investors, first of all, it would only really impact probably 7 or 8 markets around the country, because that's where primarily the institutional investors are. If those that invest in real estate get the feeling that they don't know where this is going, where policies may go and may impact their investments negatively, that means there could be less building. The home builders could pull back, which would mean less inventory in the future, which is solution to the problem. So that would be bad. We might get a very short-term correction, potentially, but then a longer-term increase in prices, actually. This has been tried, by the way, in other countries like Ireland and the Netherlands with very, very detrimental effects, and they've reversed their policies. So again, I think this is a bad idea all around and not well thought out. The solution is truly the government needs to get out of the way. It needs to reduce regulations, restrictions, delays, and if it wants to do anything, it could incentivize home builders to build more homes, particularly starter homes, entry-level homes. There should be some incentives that way. Incentives would be nothing less than allowing home builders to keep more of their profits, tax them less if they, say, built a home under a certain price level. And if the government really wants to make a difference, many current homeowners, they have a ton of appreciation on their property, and they don't want to sell because of the capital gains. Well, what if the government gave the homeowners who, say, had been in their home for a number of years, whether it be 5 or 10 or plus, whatever, had a large capital gain and gave a capital gain reduction or tax holiday for a period of time? Certainly that would encourage a number of people who were in a home, wanted to sell it, but were hesitant because of a large capital gain. That would free up a lot of inventory. So again, that's another proposal that gets the government out of the way. Reduce capital gains taxes or even give a capital gain tax holiday for a period of time. That would free up quite a number of homes. So I think the real solutions are get the government out of the way, capital gains tax holidays, tax reductions or incentives to home builders, particularly for starter homes. Those would be solutions that would really have an impact. I've had some really great meetings this past week with a number of prospective and new clients. I want to share some of their stories, and I think you're going to find very interesting, so stay tuned.
This is Ference, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. My show focuses on creating tax-free buckets of money, insured, guaranteed, highly liquid, and the ability to create positive arbitrage. Did you know this is the best time in over 40 years to invest in index annuities? An index annuity allows you to 1. Grow your money safely without market risk. Once gains are locked in, they're guaranteed against future market loss. 2. Double-digit potential upside on good market years with no losses in bad years. Principal is guaranteed. 3. A 7 to 8% fixed interest option is available in the first year. If you're interested in growing your money with potential index-related gains without downside market risk, this is the best time in over 40 years to consider an annuity. If your annuity is over 2 years old, the newer products likely have far superior potential returns. Please contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422 for more info. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com or the Your Personal Bank app. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. In the first segment, if you missed it, I discussed the latest proposal by Trump to ban institutional investors from owning real estate. And initially, I did think it was a good idea until I delved into it further, discussed some of the ramifications with a number of my clients. I have a wonderful resource, a significant number of real estate investors who are clients of mine who are actively investing in real estate as we speak, have so many of them for decades even, and started realizing many of the unintended consequences of this proposal. The bottom line is, whenever the government tries to solve one problem, it typically causes another and oftentimes hurts the people it's trying to help. And the real solution is better affordability is going to happen because of increased inventory. And the best way to increase inventory is for the government to get out of the way. Incentivize home builders to build starter homes, charge them less taxes, reduce zoning requirements, impact fees, anything that delays the process. And if they really want to free up inventory of homes, many people have a significant amount of appreciation in their homes, want to sell, but don't want to pay the large capital gains tax. Offer a capital gains tax holiday for those who maybe own their home for 5 or 10 years or more and have a significant amount of capital gains. That'll free up a bunch of houses. Again, it's about the government getting out of the way. Actually allow the free market to be the free market. See, we're in a country that doesn't really have truly a free market. We talk about free market capitalism, but more and more we have interference through government policies and agencies and related agencies like the Federal Reserve who keep messing around with our free market. If they would get out of the way, things would get a lot better. That's the bottom line. But what I want to discuss right now is one of the meetings I had this week, in fact, and I think you're going to find it very interesting because I shared some thoughts with these people that, well, they didn't even realize, and they learned a lot, even though they were quite experienced investors, business owners, real estate investors. And these are the kind of things that I can bring to the table that many people don't even realize or think about, and it improves, enhances, and makes their assets, their money, more efficient. And I also want to share some of these things because this is where I have had some of the most positive comments, and I've had a number of you reach out to me, and I appreciate that, saying, hey, keep sharing the stories, the ideas, things that you're doing with other clients, because we're learning from this ourselves. So here we go. So I met this couple. This was the second or third time. We were really dialing into their financial situation, their goals, what they wanted to accomplish. They were nearing retirement. The wife, in fact, even stated that they were ready to retire yesterday. They're real estate investors. They've been quite successful at that, at least on the side. They built their own home, in fact. Quite handy. Pretty impressive, actually. They had some qualified monies, some IRA stuff that, invested in the market, concerned about the market risk, especially given the fact that the markets have gone up so much the last couple of years. Want to protect their principal, especially, again, nearing retirement. Able to roll over some of these assets into annuities with unlimited upside potential gains, no downside risk. I've discussed this a lot on this show. This is the best year in over 40 years for annuities. It's a golden era of fixed assets. Quite happy with those options that we were able to bring to the table for them. But this is where I was able to bring some ideas that they had never even considered, but immediately realized and understood. This is how the wealthy operate, folks. They were needing some capital to continue real estate investing and build their business so they could retire. And this is true for many entrepreneurs, investors, and even people who are wanting to supplement retirement, for example. It really doesn't matter why you need the money. People who have highly appreciated stock, particularly if they bought some tech companies in the last few years, they don't really want to sell them because these are good, solid companies that will probably be around long term. Yes, there's most likely some short-term volatility over the next couple of years, but these are companies that you probably don't want to get rid of, if you know what I'm saying, because the long-term future is bright. And you don't want to sell them because there's a significant capital gain hit if you do so. Yet you have some capital needs. You need some money to spend or invest or use elsewhere. Well, there's something called a portfolio loan. There are banks that will loan up to 50% of the value of a portfolio, stocks, things like that. And by the way, if you own stocks, you can own them without any fees, folks. You can put them in a brokerage account, and if you own the actual stock, you don't need to be even charged any fees. Now, I know many of the brokerage firms are not happy about that, and if yours doesn't, then find one that does, and there's many of them out there. But my point is, you can own a highly appreciated stock and never sell it, therefore never create a taxable event, yet get benefit of some of that appreciation, at least half. And by the way, these portfolio loans are typically based on the prime rate, which is currently, as of January of 2026, about 6.75%. Some people say, well, I don't want to take a loan. I don't want to get charged interest. But here's what you need to understand. If you have a highly appreciated asset, and it's likely to continue to appreciate in the future, do you realize if you own that highly appreciated stock and it continued to increase on average at a faster level than your cost of borrowing, you would get to keep the difference? That's called positive arbitrage. Let me use an example. Let's say your stock increased 10% in a year, and your cost of borrowing was 6.75, the current rate. Well, you would get to keep the benefit of the difference, which would happen to be that year 3.25%. The money you receive would be as a loan proceeds, therefore non-taxable, tax-free money. This is how the wealthy often operate. Jeff Bezos of Amazon has been famous for the last several years, not paying any income tax, yet obviously quite a wealthy individual. How does he do it? He owns a lot of Amazon stock, among other things. He often borrows against that Amazon stock, and as long as the stock increases in value faster than his cost of borrowing, he's ahead of the ballgame, isn't he? By the way, the proceeds, the money he receives, is loan proceeds, therefore non-taxable, no 1099. So you can increase your income and not increase your tax hit, your tax liability. This is a powerful way to have an asset that you don't really want to sell. You don't want to trigger a taxable event. You want to hold it long-term, yet get some benefit from it. You can also do this through HELOCs, home equity lines of credit. Many people use this in their personal residence or real estate. Oftentimes, banks will loan 80% loan to value. And to keep it simple, let's say you had a home worth $1 million. A bank will typically loan you $800,000 or 80% in a line of credit, as long as you have decent credit. Even if you had a mortgage, they will still do that. For example, let's say your mortgage was $500,000. They were willing to loan you 80%, so you could have a line of credit of $300,000 from that example. Again, that's tax-free money. There's no cost, no points to set it up. It can sit there idle while you're not using it. It can be a great emergency cash reserve in case you needed it. Now, one of the comments I'll hear is people, again, they'll say, I don't want to borrow money and things like that. But again, it's a collateralized loan. You're borrowing against a collateralized asset. You still get the appreciation of the home, don't you? Just like in my previous example with the stocks. You benefit from the appreciation. You receive benefit from it. Therefore, your money's not tied up in bricks and mortar or tied up in these stocks that you don't ever want to touch. Yet you can benefit from the appreciation tax-free. Now, do you want to overborrow in these scenarios? No. Does it require some discipline? Yes, of course. Sometimes, and again, it's human nature, people are hesitant to borrow because they lack financial discipline. But what I find is most of the time, people who do business or people who have managed to invest, save, and been diligent over a period of time actually have the discipline to be successful. Also, if we do get into a real economic challenge, banks will restrict lending. And even during the financial crisis of 08-09, the Great Recession, some banks even shut down bank lines of credit. And that is, by the way, some real estate investors in particular and business owners who had these lines got wind of the banks getting ready to close these lines, or they saw the writing on the wall and they extracted the money from it before they got closed. And that's how they weathered the storm, the Great Recession, for example. This is how many people succeeded through those rough periods of time. So I always recommend for somebody to set up a bank line of credit if they have equity in their home, and even if they never use it, at least have it as emergency reserve, because you just never know. So we were able to free up some money through their highly appreciated stock, also through their home equity line of credit, and then showed them how we could take some of their funds and invest in your personal bank, which operates under the same principle. We create a high cash value policy that they can then borrow against up to 95% of the cash value. We have fixed options, guaranteed steady eddies that are paying 6.5%, dividends with guarantees, tax-free growth every year. We have other options, IULs, Index Universal Life, which have averaged 8 to 10% returns over the last 20 plus years. Returns are based on various indexes, but what's interesting with those is they have a fixed borrowing rate of 5% life of the contract. Folks, that's powerful. If you think about it, money is growing. Let's say that year you got a 10% return and you borrowed some of it and your cost of borrowing was 5. What's the money costing you? It's not. In fact, you're still making the difference, or what's known as positive arbitrage. You're still making the 5% on money you borrowed because you made 10 and it cost you 5 to borrow. And if you're going to use it for, say, business purposes or investments or real estate or whatever to make more, well, great. You're even that much farther ahead, aren't you? Or even like supplement retirement or handle an emergency, whatever the situation may be. These are powerful tools that can be used using strategic borrowing, being strategic about it, and using collateralized loans so you can keep the borrowing rates really low. In this case, these folks who had done some real estate investing, build some properties, sold them, fix and flip, stuff like this. We're using hard money lenders previously, charging 12 and 13%. I was able to show them how they could drop their borrowing cost down to between 5 to 7%, roughly half. Well, if you cut your borrowing costs in half on a business project, that just means more profitability to you, doesn't it? So we freed up a bunch of capital, a bunch of liquidity, cut their borrowing costs in half roughly, reduced the market risk on their qualified accounts. These were pretty happy folks when we were done. And they had learned some things and learned how to be more efficient and operate with their money better, more efficiently, more effectively, much like the wealthy do. These are the kinds of things I share with people depending on their situations, obviously, depending on their goals and what they're looking for. Depending on their risk tolerance, there's all kinds of number of things that we can do. I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned in the next segment because I'm going to share a couple other meetings I had with folks with different situations that I think you will find quite illuminating also. So stay tuned.
This is Ferentz, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. Your Personal Bank is a financial concept that allows you to grow your money insured with guarantees, income tax-free, and highly liquid. Also, you have the potential to continue to earn interest on money you invest in other assets, purchase items, or pay expenses. How can you do this? First, invest in a high cash value policy to earn dividends. If you leave money in the policy, it'll grow like any investment, insured with guarantees and tax-free. Second, we establish a bank line of credit using the cash in the policy as collateral. When you access funds, you receive them from the bank. Typically, dividends earned are higher than the interest charged by the bank. You keep the difference. This is known as positive arbitrage. If you want to earn interest on money you spent or invest elsewhere, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422 for more info. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferentz Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferentz at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferentz Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferentz. If you want to reach me, you can do so at the yourpersonalbank.com or the Your Personal Bank app. Yes, you will reach me, yourpersonalbank.com. So I'm sharing some of the meetings I had this past week with folks who are either clients or potential clients. And I've had some tremendous feedback, positive feedback from folks, listeners who have really appreciated the stories and ideas that I share with people as I meet with them. They're learning things and they have a better understanding of what I do and what I bring to the table and help people, be more efficient with their money, be more successful, have more money to live on, build, expand, invest, supplement retirement, whatever it may be. And so this second couple that I want to share, it was a situation I run into very, very often. In fact, they had a 401k from an old company. And first of all, one of the things I share all the time with folks is if you've got an old 401k, understand something. 401ks are different than IRAs. They're both qualified plans. And if you're talking about traditional, the taxes are deferred so the money can grow, tax deferred. You pay taxes on the money when you withdraw it, when you take it out. Typically, you have to wait to age 59 and a half. By the way, there's a rule that allows you to take it at 55 without a tax penalty. I can get into that with somebody if they're interested. But the bottom line is it's a retirement type of account. You kind of set it and forget it. The idea is, supplement retirement down the road. But here's the problem with 401ks, especially once you've left the company. You went from an asset as an employee of that company to now a liability. Companies typically really actually don't want to carry 401ks on the books for former employees. The other thing you need to understand from a legal standpoint on 401ks, oftentimes you will see on the statement for the benefit of or something to that effect. Most people understand enough about life insurance. Who controls the money, the owner or the beneficiary? Obviously, it's the owner. Well, if you have a 401k through a former employer, but yet who, from a legal standpoint, really controls that money? It's the company, the custodian, not the individual, not the beneficiary, which is you. And I can prove this. I know people will argue this point, but I can prove this. I don't know if you remember after the Great Recession, GM went into a in essence, a receivership. It went into a bankruptcy and the government bailed it out. There was a whole legal process and all this. I have a number of clients that were former retirees of GM, the old GM as they call it, and they basically shut down, in essence, and this can happen through bankruptcy courts, shut down what they called the old GM and created the new GM. And also in the process of that transition through the court system, old GM employees lost a portion of their 401ks because the courts can do that. The reason why they can do that is there was company match. The company match money that was contributed into the 401k can be clawed back through a bankruptcy court. I've seen this with clients multiple times. A company restructures, gets into financial issues, you're no longer with them, and the court system can claw back a portion of that 401k. So you don't really have full control of it, is what I'm trying to say. So my recommendation, the solution is roll it over to an IRA. A rollover is a non-taxable event. And why an IRA? An IRA, by definition, is an individual retirement account. Who owns and controls that? You do, the individual. If you have any old 401k, by all means, do yourself a favor. Roll it over to an IRA. Now, some people will keep their old 401ks because the fees and things like that are lower typically on a 401k than an IRA. I understand that. But I can also show you how to get into fixed index annuities without any fees, unlimited upside potential, no downside market risk. I've got indexes that have averaged over 10% returns literally for the last 10 years plus. This is the golden era of fixed assets. It's the best time in over 40 years. So if you want to get into something without fees and unlimited upside and have the downside protection, which means overall you could easily have more money overall, especially after a downturn or two, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. So we took care of that. First of all, that was one of the first things we brought up. There were a number of questions that they had in terms of the assets they were invested in. Here's one of the things that I found it's been very common. It's no secret that the stock market itself, the S&P 500, the tech stocks have done tremendously well over the last few years. But when you dive into most of these accounts and what people really, the returns that they're actually receiving, the returns that they've received in the last few years are directly responsible to how much exposure they've had to the Magnificent Seven. We've discussed this on the show many times now. If you've been listening, you know this. The vast majority of the gains that have occurred over the last 2 or 3 years in the markets have come from basically 7 companies, the Magnificent Seven. And that's NVIDIA and Microsoft, Tesla, Amazon, those tech companies, right? Google, and 1 or 2 others. If you had significant exposure or owned a significant amount of those companies, you have seen tremendous returns. If not, you know what the average returns I've been actually seeing on brokerage accounts looking back over the last 2, 3, 5, 10 years even? I rarely ever see anything that approaches even 5%. And folks, that's the facts. That's net of all fees, actual returns. Looking at a statement from 2, 5, 10 years ago, looking at what they have today, figuring it out, averaging it out over the time period. I had one client met with last month, had about $1 million invested over the past 5 years. Her average annual return, 3.9%. Folks, that's the norm, not the exception. That's what I want you to understand. I know this is sacrilege to some people. Some of you are going to get upset with me. Listen to this. I understand this. But I'm just telling you what I'm actually seeing. Actual statements, not the hype, not the noise, actual statements. And I'm not seeing 1 or 2 of these. I'm seeing dozens. I'm seeing several of these per week. And it's been going on for the last year or 2. Okay? And it was actually lower than that before this recent run-up we've seen the last couple of years. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing, what I'm actually experiencing. So these folks, when we were looking at his old 401k, as we put it, similar kind of thing, obviously was not happy with the actual results. And then I showed him indexes, and this is proprietary information. It's not public record. probably less than 1% of agents and advisors have access to these indexes on these. Do you know there's several hundred indexes available? There's about 50 companies, annuity companies out there. There are over 300 products, approximately 600 indexes. For one, how in the world can anyone keep track of all that? They can't. You have to have a computer software program to sort it all out for you, for one. And I show this. In fact, when I meet with people, and I did with these folks, and people find this quite fascinating, I share with them, I'm going to show you how the sausage is made. I'm going to show you what I actually see. So full transparency. You're going to see the same product sheets that I as an agent see. And I'm not sharing anything that's not allowed to be shared, okay? But they're seeing the same stuff I am. And I show them the actual sort, and I'll show them, okay, based on your age and the amount you have to invest and the state you're in, you know, these folks, I think there was something like 347 index products available. And then we're able to literally in seconds sort by which ones have the highest returns or highest upside potentials, things like that. So if you're talking to someone about, say, an index product, index annuity, index IUL, whatever, and they can't show you dozens, at least, if not hundreds of products available, what does that tell you? They don't have access to all those products. Being totally independent, by the way, I've been told about 10% of agents and advisors are truly independent and have access to all these companies, as I do. The other 90% roughly don't. So there's one advantage. We can bring anything to the table so we can ensure you have the best product available, period. I always say somebody can match me, but they can't beat me because there's nothing else available, right? But here's the other second piece, and the true game changer in terms of finding the best product, has the most upside potential, and that is this. I have access to proprietary software that has index performance reports. It shows us the 1, 5, 10-year actual returns of these indexes, and there's hundreds of them. So we can look at these and look at the actual indexes like the S&P, like the NASDAQ, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, all these different indexes that exist out there on these index products. And we can see what they actually have returned, their actual returns. And you want to know something? About 80% of them, their average returns over the last 10 years are in the low single digits. That's part of the reason why index products have gotten somewhat of a bad rap in terms of low returns. If you don't have access as an agent or advisor to the index performance report, you have really no idea what these indexes have done. Again, it's not public record for the most part. So you can make some educated guesses. I'm not picking on the advisors and agents. You're kind of flying blind. And early in my career, I was too, to be fair. When I didn't know about it, I would do my best to try to pick. I think the intentions are good. Most agents and advisors try to pick the best index options, but don't really have a track record of what they've done. Maybe they look at what they might know or what maybe somebody told them or a marketer brought to their attention, whatever that may be, maybe some personal experience. But how do you keep track of hundreds? I have the report. It gets updated every month. I'll show it to you. You'll actually see firsthand. Well, guess what? About 20% of them have tremendous results, like 8, 9, 10, 12. I've got one that had 15. I worked with one today, 15.5% average annual return for the past 10 years on average. Best year, 2023, at a 37% return. 1 year. That's an index product for an index annuity, folks. Average 15% plus. So I show this all to you so you see it yourself firsthand. So the analogy I've been using that's really effective is if you want to win a horse race, you have to have two things. You have to have a fast horse and a good jockey. If you don't have a fast horse, you can't win the race. You're not going to get very far. That's obvious. But you could have a fast horse and a really bad jockey and still lose the race and do really poorly, right? Well, the horse is the index. You got to pick an index that historically performs. If you're picking an index that's getting double-digit returns consistently over the past decade, 10, 12, even 15%, we have those, versus one that's getting 3, 2, 3, 5%. The one that's getting 2, 3, 5% average returns, can it have a great year? Sure, but what are the odds? What are the odds of it all of a sudden doing 10%? Pretty low. It's never done it before. Why do you think it's going to do it in the future? Or one that's historically averaging 10, 12, 15%, probably is going to do much more likely to do that again. So that's the horse. You got to have the fast horse. Then these companies, the jockeys, some jockeys will accelerate a horse and some of them will pull him back, throttle him. Well, the companies have on all these indexes accelerators or throttles, depending on the different indexes. There's indexes that are offered by different companies, no cap, no fee, 175% participation rate. Others might have a 70% participation rate. That's more of a throttle. 175 is an accelerator. On the surface, the 175 sounds a lot better than the 70. But what if the 70% was based on the 15% average and the 175 was based on a index that averaged 3%? I actually show you that. So on the surface, the 175% participation rate looks awesome. If it's on a plow horse, it's really slow and never does anything, your return might be 5-6%. Where if you get 70% of a 15% index, your return's more like 11 or 12. You want 5 or 6 or 11 or 12? It's double the difference. You see what I'm saying? That's the game changer. That's what I actually show you. I showed this couple, and they walked away from this saying, we learned more than we ever have before. And these were not inexperienced folks. This is what I bring to the table and the game-changing difference and how we can enhance your returns significantly without any downside risk. Stay tuned in the last segment. I got one more meeting I think you're going to find quite interesting. It's been a fun week, folks, so don't miss it.
I'm Ference Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. This is the golden era of fixed assets. Annuities and guaranteed lifetime income are paying the best rates in over 40 years. If you looked at annuities over 2 years ago, the numbers have increased significantly. If you own an annuity over 2 years old, the new products can not only pay your penalty to switch, but are often guaranteed to outperform your current product. For more info, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or 866-268-4422. That's yourpersonalbank.com.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference. If you want to reach me, you can do so at yourpersonalbank.com or you go to the Your Personal Bank app. Yes, you will reach me. It's yourpersonalbank.com. So the last couple segments, I've been sharing some meetings I've had with folks this past week. Been really busy. It's been great. Kicking off the year. A lot of people, getting their financial house in order. Got some goals, some things they want to accomplish. It's been a lot of fun. Doing a lot of educating, helping people enhance their financial situation, make it more efficient, show them how to free up monies, increase their returns, reduce their market risk, reduce their taxes, all that fun stuff. I enjoy it. And if you missed the previous couple, you can always go to Your Personal Bank app, listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows. Each has its own topic. Anything that interests you, I think you'll find. Yeah, you can check it out. But this third meeting I had just, in fact, today was I found quite interesting also because this one was a little out of the ordinary, as I put it. He didn't fit in any real box that you would find typical. And this gentleman was in a situation where he'd had some, qualified accounts that I find quite often in many people. As I shared in the last segment of the previous couple, showed him how we can roll that over into an index with unlimited upside potential. In fact, put them in that index I was sharing with you previously that's averaged about 11-12% over the last decade. Actual returns in the pockets with no downside risk. Pleased with that idea. Very excited. He had a good income, actually, that was in place, so we're going to take care of him for about the next decade. That income was not a problem. He was kind of good to go. Had received a fairly large chunk of money and was really kind of looking at what to do with it. Understood he needed to invest it, keeping it in savings in the bank. That bank account wasn't going to do him a lot of good long term. Inflation, if nothing else, would eat it up, obviously. So he understood he needed to do something about it, was looking for options. And so in the last segment, if you missed it, I'm going to encourage you to go back to it. I really shared. I pulled back the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. I showed how the sausage is made. I did that again. I do this on a regular basis, showing where I have the two software programs, one where we have all the different products available. And again, with this gentleman, with the state, the amount of funds we were investing and his age, there was like 300-400 products available. If you're talking to somebody about an index product, whether it's an IUL, index annuity or something, if they can't bring to the table literally hundreds of options and they can't show you that, I'm going to say you probably want to get a second opinion. Probably should contact me at yourpersonalbank.com because I'll literally show you. the hundreds of options that are available, and then we'll sort them according to like whether you want a bonus or need a bonus. I mean, we got companies that are paying up to 27% signing bonus, folks. So if you have a index annuity, for example, that has a penalty to get out, I've done a number of those. I've had folks that have index annuities with 10, 12% penalties. Well, gosh, if you got a 27% bonus and the index is far superior to what you were earning before, like double, triple even, again, based on past 10-year history, and you get a signing bonus and you're up by 10, 12, 15% even day one out the gate over what you had, it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? So we discussed a few of those things, whether bonus made sense or not. And by the way, I've shared this before. I'll share it again. A lot of people are seduced by the shiny object of the big bonus. But if a company's going to give you something, there's going to take something away. There's a trade-off. Look, if you're going to get a big bonus, you know what the trade-off is? The company's going to curtail or not give you as much upside gain potential in the future. I'm going to tell you, if you're getting like a 10% bonus or higher, your future gains are going to be cut in half roughly. That's how it works. If you're wanting to maximize gains, a bonus is actually not the best way to go. If you go with a better non-bonus product based on average returns, typically about year 5, the non-bonus product will catch up to the bonus product. Yes, it starts at a lower level because you didn't get the bonus, but its growth each year on average is higher, and about year 5, you catch up. Plan on investing more than 5 years, and you don't need a bonus, you're probably better off with the non-bonus product. But sometimes you need a bonus, like I mentioned earlier. I've had a number of people over the last few months who had significant penalties, 7, 9, 12% even. Okay, well, you don't want to take a hit getting out of your old annuity because it's not performing very well and you've got this big penalty. You feel like you're stuck. Well, you're not. We can get you that big bonus, 22, 27%. I had one person I met this week. I'm not going to share much on this one because not a lot of new information to share. It's different than these 3 I want to focus on. Actually turning 79, older annuity, not performing, not happy, wrong indexes. Okay, as I shared earlier. She didn't have the fastest horse. In fact, she had a couple plow horses, pretty bad, and didn't have the best jockeys. You know, you got to have a fast horse and a good jockey to win a race, right? Or win a horse race. The index is the horse, and the riders are the jockey. What the accelerator or the throttles that the company gives you on these different indexes. The combination of the two is what's going to determine how much your returns are actually going to be. Again, I show you the actual returns with the index performance report. You'll see all the hundreds of different indexes out there and which ones, what's the 1, 5, 10-year results. You're talking to somebody, they can't show you the actual index results of what it's done over the past 5, 10 years. I wouldn't recommend investing in that index because you have no idea what it's going to do, and neither do they. Neither does the agent or the advisor. I'm sorry, but that's the facts. Maybe they're making an educated guess. Maybe they have some history with it. But if they don't have the actual returns, kind of a crapshoot, isn't it? I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying that's the facts. Even when I didn't have that early in my career, I would make the best educated guesses I could. My intentions were good. I would listen to other people, maybe what they were telling me or what a marketer was telling me. Hey, this was a great product with a great index, and I believed them because I didn't have anything else to go on. And I even had this same person, this gal, she actually contacted her old company and asked them, well, what's the index performance report on this index? And they were like, they didn't have an answer because they don't know. They didn't have that information. It's not public record. It's proprietary. Having it is the game changer, folks. Not having it, you're just taking a shot in the dark. When I show you the index report, show you the hundreds of different indexes that exist with these index annuities and IUL products, Index Universal Life, fully 80% of them are low single-digit average returns for the past decade. Whatever index you're invested in, with whatever company, with whatever product it is, I don't really care. Do you realize there's an 80% chance that your returns are going to be in the low single digits? That's the statistical fact. And that is, unfortunately, one of the primary reasons why some people look down on index annuities or Index Universal Life, because the returns have just not been very good. And the returns have not been very good because you and or the agent or whoever you worked with didn't know which indexes to pick because you didn't have the index performance reports. So you're flying blind. You're taking a crapshoot in the dark. You don't really know. And like I said, it's possible for an index that's, let's say, the past 10 years, its average return's been 3%. I can show you plenty of them like that, by the way. That's the norm, not the exception. Can it make 10% in a particular year? Sure. What are the odds of that? If it's never done it for the past decade, why would it do it any time in the next decade? It could happen, but the odds are pretty darn low it's going to happen, aren't they? Versus you got another index, which is average 12%, even 15%, on average, consistently over the last decade. What are the odds of it getting a double-digit return in the future? Much, much higher, obviously, because it typically does that. You see the difference? And without the index performance report, you just don't know. The last piece of it is the principal isn't guaranteed on the amount you contribute, but then when you lock in a gain, so if it goes up 10%, for example, use a quick, simple example. You got 100 grand, you put in, and it goes up 10%, you got 110. That locks in. Guess what? Market corrects, goes down the next year, doesn't matter. Still got 110. The 110 is your new principal. So each and every year you have the same amount of money or more, guaranteed. That's how an index annuity works. And if you get a good index, which is a fast horse, has a track record of running good, strong, and fast, and you get a good jockey, a good rider who allows you most of the upside gains, most of the upside potential without caps and fees and limitations and throttles, because a lot of them have that. You want to avoid those kinds of things if you want to maximize returns, and you want to do it safely. So now you have the best of the upside without the downside risk, because you don't have to participate in those corrections, those downturns. The last piece of that most people don't realize, in a downturn, not only do you lose money or your account value goes down, but you have to then recover. In the recovery, you got to make up for the loss before you can move forward again. So if you have a 20% loss, let's say in a year, you've got to make up that 20% before you actually really make any progress forward. That's lost time. What if that took a year or two, sometimes more? By the way, the typical correction in the market history over the last 100 years averages 5 to 15 years, top to bottom to back to the same level. If you're not participating in that, you're not participating in that drop and then recovery period, you don't lose that 5 or 15 years. You go up, market corrects, you stay up, and when it recovers and starts going up again, you go up also from the higher number. In my example, 100,000 to 110, market goes down, you stay at 110. When the market corrects, you go up from the higher number, the 110, not the lower number, whatever that may be. That's why index annuities are so popular, because they want the upside without the downside risk. If you want more information on this, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Stay tuned next week for some more great information on the Your Personal Bank Show. And as long as it's on our money, in God we trust.
Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice.
Concerned about market risk? I'm Ference Toth, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. The S&P 500 valuations are higher than at any time ever recorded in stock market history. This includes 1929 and 1999. We all know what happened afterwards. It wasn't pretty. Elevated valuations increase risk to the downside. Annuities and Your Personal Bank offer unlimited upside with no downside market risk. Your principal is guaranteed. Contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com to maximize returns, reduce market risk, increase liquidity, and reduce taxes.